Welcome back to Team Talk, ESPN Radio 1017, The Team. We're just going to get you caught up in the information that we know. There's been a tragedy down in Hobbs, New Mexico. A Hobbs high school student has been getting the New Mexico community very sad, and the student at Hobbs High School also happened to be part of the Hobbs High School football team, popular in the community and his church, and it's extraordinarily sad. And to get a feel on how things are going in the tight-knit communities in southeastern New Mexico, and from Lovington High School, he was there 25 years, is Speedy Faith. You were at Lovington High 25 years. You still live in Lovington, and just wanted to get a feel for the sadness that is going through that southeastern New Mexico communities.
Well, Joe, I'll let you know, it's devastating. When you lose young people in your communities, it affects everybody. And this is one of the saddest things that we've ever had to deal with. And even though I'm Lovington, I'm proximity to Hobbs, and a lot of Lovington kids and Hobbs kids know each other and hang around with each other. And so it affects all of us, and it's a terrible situation.
Yes, and you are still a teacher and a coach, not at Lovington, but 28 miles down the road and across the border in Texas at Denver City High School. So the approach that you guys are taking over there has seemed to have been working pretty well. Am I correct?
Yes. The state of Texas has basically let each one of the school districts determine how they were going to handle going back to school or not. And the majority of the school districts in the state of Texas are going face-to-face. There was an option of allowing students to learn online. And like in my situation, just to give you an example, at the beginning of the year, I had 90 students enrolled in my academic classes, not the athletic classes. And out of those 90, about 10 of them decided to learn remotely. So I was carrying on two ways of teaching. However, since the beginning of the school year, all 10 of those remote learners have chosen to come back to school and go face-to-face. It's just so much better to have class the way we've always had class. And so that, to me, speaks volumes on the two contrasting methods of education. Kids want to be here. Parents want them to be here. And like I said, each school district has their own way of handling it. And I believe Denver City, we do all of the protocols. Everybody wears a mask. They sanitize every time they come into the classroom. All of the things that you can be safe and still do this. And so I'm an advocate of allowing kids to go back to school. I think that's the best thing for them.
We're talking with former Lovington High School football coach Speedy Faith here on ESPN Radio 1017, The Team. He's sharing the sadness that is in southeastern New Mexico. A Hobbs High School student, there was a tragic situation there in Hobbs, and you still obviously have a lot of people connected with the education here in New Mexico. They're doing it obviously completely different than the way you just explained to me in Denver City, Texas.
That's correct. All of the New Mexico schools are shut down, locked down, can't go, trying to learn remotely. And I have a very good perspective. Even though I teach and coach in Denver City, both of my children teach in Lovington along with their spouses. And I have a lot of connections, obviously, throughout the state of New Mexico. Having coached there for a long time, coached in different places. And I know the perspective of teachers and coaches. They want to be in class. And it can be done relatively safe. So I know that everybody is struggling in New Mexico, and we're pleading for a chance to be able to show everybody else that this can be done, and it's the best thing for kids. Being away from school, and I'm talking about the classrooms, is not good. We're seeing it. It's obvious. We know that kids struggle. and we've got to give them an opportunity. And honestly, I'm not even talking about athletics. That's part of it. Athletics is part of education. I believe that. I've been doing this for 42 years, and I know that there are a lot of kids that learn a lot of lessons from athletics, but I'm not talking about just playing. I'm talking about being in a classroom and being able to interact with their classmates and being able to learn together and develop those relationships that carry on for the course of their lifetime. Think about how many people, kids you knew that were your age, and you still have a relationship with them. And we're kind of cutting into that. Now, I know kids are going to make contact outside of class and all of that, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And I'm a big advocate of being able to go back to school.
Yeah, and another thing, too, is you experienced when the pandemic started mid-March, and you guys in that same area adhered to everything in finishing out the 2020 March, April, and May. So you actually got to see what life was like without it, and then also life, what it's like now with it back in, with the option of learning remotely, as you mentioned, but the overwhelming choice, at least in your classroom setting, is the ones that chose to go face-to-face. So did they also have a kind of renewed appreciation maybe for their education coming back after missing literally 3 or 4 months worth of school early in the year, Speedy?
No doubt. It was right at our spring break last year, Denver City, and we shut down. Nobody went back to school for the rest of the school year, and kids saw how it affected them. Teachers saw how it affected the kids and the parents, and we all knew it wasn't a good situation. So we were just hoping and praying that the state of Texas was going to be able to open up and allow it, each school district to determine their own fate. And so we were very glad when that happened, because we did not enjoy the 3 months, 2.5 months of being shut down. It was terrible. We weren't able to go to school. We couldn't have any interaction other than through a computer, which is just not the same. And the athletics was all shut down. We were totally shut down. So when the kids had that opportunity to be able to come back, I do think that they understand the importance of being able to come into a classroom and get on a field. It's just that important to them. Now, in football, there were a lot of teams that missed games this year because they didn't follow through. Something happened. I'm not blaming them. They just had a teammate with a virus or whatever, and so they lost games. And so every day at practice, our coach would tell us, Coach Fontenot would say, you guys maintain your protocol. Make sure you're doing things right. Not only at school, which teachers make sure they are, but at home and when you're out in the town. Take care of yourself. And so I think everybody, at least my experience has been, everybody's understanding that this being in school is a good thing, and we got to take care of it. It's precious. And so we don't want anybody screwing that up for anybody else. So, yeah, they've got a renewed interest in being in school.
Okay, I got to ask you this. Along those lines, what was the approach from the teachers? Were they kind of given the same options of either attending? Obviously, you're back at school. So how was that into the conversation, Speedy?
I think that we were asked to be able to come back. I think if a teacher had opted to try to teach remotely, they probably would have been given that option. However, as long as you're safe about it, and, I may be jinxing everything, I don't know, but as long as you're safe, we've not experienced any tragic situations. We've had a staff member get our principal, amazingly enough, was exposed and tested positive. So he had to quarantine. But school kept on going. People stepped up. So there's a risk of it. But
if this thing has been going on since, when did you guys start? Back in September, I guess? Just like it would normally start in the fall?
Yeah, middle of August.
Middle of August. Okay, even earlier. So obviously that's a long period of time and a large body of work. What's the bottom line? Has there been very many cases that have had to disrupt things? You just mentioned that example, but as a whole?
Right. We have had kids test positive. I asked the principal for some data on that. And so since the beginning of school, we've had 60 kids or staff members test positive. But yet school keeps going on. Now, those kids have to go home. Absolutely. Stay away. Learn remotely. Get assignments via the internet, all that kind of stuff. But schools, and pep rallies all changed. We didn't have pep rallies. We had virtual pep rallies.
Yep.
We don't get to meet as classes together anymore. All of those kinds of things have changed, and yet the bottom line is, even though we've had those cases, we still have school. We still have kids interacting and building relationships.
Right. I think it goes back to what we've heard is that everybody knew there wasn't going to be anything that was a perfect solution, but the fact that it appears these students at Denver City High School are in the routine of going back to school, and they even have a greater appreciation for going to school maybe than they had in years past.
I believe that's absolutely true. And one of the things that some of the data that has to be looked at, I just read recently that 1/3 of the athletes in New Mexico would not be eligible because they have an F. No pass, no play situation. Denver City this year, we did not lose one athlete, volleyball or football, to grades. Yep. So the incentive is there for kids to be able to play and participate, and they'll maintain their grades. That's always been true. And man,
and you make the point too, Coach. Is this isn't just about athletics? It's like about activities. It's the New Mexico Activities Association. So it's like it has to do with all the organizations within the school system, right? I mean,
exactly.
Whether
Absolutely.
it's the band, you have an appreciation for all those groups, whether it's the debate team or the band or the football team or whatever. Am I right?
Exactly. And I'll tell you, in Texas they have the UIL, and there's all sorts of other things that go on. All of that's continuing with a lot of safety precautions. But in New Mexico, the New Mexico Activities Association, headed up by Sally Marcus, man, she's doing a bang-up job of trying to get our kids back into activities because she understands the importance of the activities in these kids' lives. It's not a mystery. I mean, we know that. At one time, I think it was 96% of the generals that ever served in the United States Army were in activities, and most of those guys had been in football. It's just a fact of life that they learn a lot by being in those kinds of activities, and be it band. I love band, and Lovington Band loves me because I was one of their biggest supporters. I mean, we were all in that thing together. I gave a pep talk at a pep rally one time, and I spent more time talking about the band than I did the football team. But it's all activities.
Right.
That's what makes it so great.
Well, when I had asked about just giving me an update on how the whole tragedy unfolded in that part, you had a lot of other things that were relevant, I thought, and thank you for sharing those with us, Coach Faith.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's devastating. I know the people in Hobbs. I've talked to the head football coach. I'm not bragging on me, but I went through a similar situation like that. We did in Lovington back in the year 2000, where we lost one of our football players in another tragic event. And so I had been down that road, and I felt incumbent upon me to share whatever I could with Coach Stevens in Hobbs. And it didn't stop there. I reached out to a lot of people, and that's what communities do. That's what people do. I think that's what God has instructed us to do, is to share whatever we can with other people to make it better and easier. And so I'm asking the people of New Mexico, keep Hobbs in your prayers, and do whatever we can possibly do. Do whatever we can possibly do to get our schools open back in New Mexico. It's just extremely important.
Appreciate it, Coach. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Team Talk on ESPN Radio 101.7, The Team.